In a quiet monastery garden in the 1850s, a monk kneels among rows of pea plants. He holds a small brush, transferring pollen from one flower to another, his notebook beside him. Day after day, he records how tall or short each plant grows, the color of their seeds and the shape of their pods. It seems like humble gardening work, but behind each cross-pollination lies a question that has haunted humanity for centuries. Why do offspring resemble their parents, but never perfectly? Why does nature blend traits in some cases and preserve them in others? The monk's name is Gregor Mendel, and the patterns he uncovers here will rewrite the rules of life itself. Welcome to Mattermosaic, piecing together the universe, one discovery at a time. Today we explore the story of Gregor Mendel and how his patient experiments in a monastery garden revealed the hidden mathematical order beneath biology, the blueprint of heredity. In Mendel's time, biology was still guided more by philosophy than experimentation. Many believed that traits blended like paints, mix yellow and blue, get green. The idea that something invisible, small, discrete units determined life's traits was unimaginable. But Mendel, with his background in mathematics and his curiosity about living things, saw patterns where others saw chaos. In the garden of St. Thomas Abbey in Brunn, he began crossbreeding pea plants, one trait at a time, smooth with wrinkled seeds, tall with short stems, yellow with green peas. He did this not once or twice, but tens of thousands of times. By the time he finished, he had bred over 28,000 plants. As the generations grew, Mendel noticed something remarkable. The offspring didn't show random variations. Instead, they followed consistent ratios. Roughly 3 out of 4 plants displayed one trait, and 1 out of 4 showed the other. The results were too regular to be coincidence. Nature, he realized, was following laws, statistical, predictable, and precise. Somewhere within each organism, something was deciding which traits would appear and which would hide. Mendel didn't call these things genes, the term didn't exist yet. He called them factors, invisible elements passed from parent to offspring. Each organism carried 2 of these factors for each trait, 1 from each parent. When breeding occurred, these factors separated and recombined, determining the outcome in the next generation. This simple observation led Mendel to 2 principles that still define genetics today: the law of segregation, which describes how pairs of traits separate during reproduction, and the law of independent assortment, which explains how different traits are inherited independently of one another. In his notebooks, Mendel saw nature's arithmetic unfolding before him. The messy, unpredictable world of biology had structure, a hidden code written in numbers. For the first time, heredity could be measured and predicted. He realized that variation itself, the differences between individuals, wasn't noise but the mechanism through which life evolved and adapted. Yet, when Mendel published his findings in 1866 in an obscure local journal, almost no one paid attention. His paper, Experiments on Plant Hybridization, was decades ahead of its time. Most scientists dismissed it, or failed to understand its importance. They were still caught in the old paradigm of blending inheritance and had no concept of molecules like DNA or chromosomes. Mendel's discovery existed in a scientific void, accurate, profound, but isolated. He continued his work quietly, becoming abbot of his monastery and focusing on administrative duties. His garden experiments faded into obscurity. Mendel died in 1884, largely unknown beyond the walls of Brunn. His notebooks gathered dust, his data forgotten. But ideas as revolutionary as his don't stay buried forever. Truth has a way of resurfacing when the world is ready for it. In 1900, 3 scientists, Hugo de Vries, Carl Correns, and Erich von Tschermak, independently rediscovered the same principles while studying plant hybrids. When they compared notes, they realized that someone had already solved the mystery decades earlier. They reopened Mendel's paper and were astonished to find the laws of inheritance clearly described, complete with ratios and data. The forgotten monk had been right all along. Suddenly, Mendel's garden became the birthplace of a new science, genetics. What he had called factors were now recognized as genes, the units of heredity encoded within DNA. His meticulous ratios laid the foundation for understanding chromosomes, mutations, and evolution itself. Every branch of biology, from agriculture to medicine, began to grow from the seed Mendel had planted. As the 20th century unfolded, Mendel's laws became the cornerstone of modern science. The discovery of DNA's double helix in 1953 revealed the physical structure behind his invisible factors. Each twist of the molecule carried instructions, coded combinations of adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine that directed how organisms develop, function, and pass traits to their offspring. Mendel had uncovered the rules of the game without ever knowing the pieces. His work also transformed how scientists saw evolution. Charles Darwin had published On the Origin of Species just a few years before Mendel began his experiments. Darwin understood that traits were inherited, but he couldn't explain how variation was maintained without blending away. Mendel's principles provided the missing mechanism. When rediscovered, they completed the puzzle Darwin had left unfinished, giving rise to what we now call the modern synthesis, the unification of genetics and evolution. Beyond science, Mendel's story is one of perseverance and curiosity. He wasn't a famous scholar or a wealthy researcher. He was a man of faith and reason, driven by an urge to understand the patterns of life. His monastery garden became his laboratory, his pea plants, his instruments of discovery. He found order in simplicity and meaning in repetition. Each cross-pollination was an act of devotion to knowledge, to nature, to truth itself. And yet, Mendel's legacy also carries a quiet tragedy. He never saw the impact of his work. He spent his later years frustrated by administrative disputes, his health declining, his discoveries ignored. It would take generations before the world recognized that the foundation of modern biology had been built in his garden. He died thinking his work had failed. But science has a way of remembering those who look deeply enough to see what others overlook. Today, every genetic test, every field of biotechnology, every study of evolution and heredity stands on Mendel's shoulders. His laws explain why eye color runs in families, why diseases can be inherited, and how diversity thrives in every living population. They even guide the frontiers of genetic engineering and CRISPR technology, the ability to edit genes with precision, something that would have seemed like alchemy in Mendel's time. And yet, for all the complexity of modern genetics, its heart remains rooted in that monastery garden. The same questions that drove Mendel, how life organizes itself, how traits persist and change, continue to inspire scientists today. In every experiment mapping genomes or tracing ancestry, Mendel's ratios echo quietly in the background, a reminder that the grandest truths often begin with the simplest observations. It's humbling to think that the story of heredity, one of the greatest scientific revolutions, began not in a laboratory filled with instruments, but in a peaceful garden tended by a single man with a notebook. Mendel's discovery reminds us that science doesn't always emerge from chaos or competition. Sometimes it grows slowly, nurtured by patience, curiosity, and the desire to understand the world as it is. In the end, Mendel's peas taught us more than just biology. They revealed the architecture of life, the balance between chance and order, simplicity and complexity. They showed that beneath every living thing, from the smallest seed to the human mind, lies a shared code, a common ancestry written in the same universal language of inheritance. And perhaps that is Mendel's greatest gift, not just the discovery of genetic laws, but the realization that life itself follows a pattern, a mosaic of connections linking all beings through time. His work reminds us that knowledge, like life, often begins in small, quiet places, waiting to be rediscovered. This is Mattermosaic, piecing together the universe, one discovery at a time. If this story sparked your curiosity, leave a like, share it with someone who loves science history, and tell us which discovery you'd like to explore next. Subscribe for more weekly journeys through the fabric of reality.